This is the Perfectionism Project, the only podcast created specifically for perfectionists who are building businesses. I'm your host, Sam Laura Brown, perfectionism expert and entrepreneur. I teach perfectionists how to plan properly, consistently follow through, and rest without guilt so they can build profitable and fulfilling businesses without burning out. I've helped over 1,000 perfectionist entrepreneurs do exactly that inside my program, Perfectionists Getting Shit Done. If you're tired of procrastinating, overthinking, and half finishing your ideas, you're in the right place. Now let's dive in. Okay, so I'm really excited to bring you today's episode. So sometimes what I do with this podcast, now that I have over 600 episodes, is that I curate the best of the podcast episodes and share them with you again because I want to make sure they don't get missed. So this episode that you're about to hear is so important for all perfectionist entrepreneurs. You want to listen to this episode. It's all about the point of goals. And if you want to grow, if you want to achieve something you've never achieved before in your business, maybe it's making a full-time income from your business or being able to leave your job, any of those things, any of those dreams that we have to just have a business. If you want to achieve something you've never achieved before, you want to understand how goals are a tool to do that rather than approaching goals as something that you should set in a realistic way or something that you might have a lot of resistance around setting because you are worried about how disappointed you'll be if you don't achieve your goal. So in this episode, I go into common goal setting mistakes that perfectionists make simply just because we don't get told what the real point of goals is. And when I had this realization, when I was taught about the point of goals, things just clicked in a way they'd never clicked before. And I was really able to start using goals as a tool. And that has been an absolutely essential part of my growth as an entrepreneur and me being able to build a successful business. And in Perfectionist Getting Shit Done, you will set a growth goal, a goal that will grow you. So exactly this concept that I'm talking about in this episode before I had the name growth goal for it, that is one of the first things that you will learn inside Perfectionist Getting Shit Done, because you need to have a goal to create a container for you to grow in. So I hope you enjoy this episode. And I also want to mention what I am doing is I am teaching weekly a live workshop called the Power Planning Workshop. If you love this podcast, you want to attend that workshop with me live. I taught it live for the first time last week, and everyone who was there were like, oh my God, this is so helpful, so mind-blowing. So I want to invite you to come. If you can't make it live, you can get the replay. You want to register. It's free to come. And I'm going to teach you how to consistently follow through with your plans, with your business plans, without burning out, especially if you are someone who you have a really busy schedule, you've got a lot on your plate. If you have a history of making plans and making these perfect plans and then falling off with them, if you just can't currently right now rely on yourself to follow through with what you plan to do this week, I want to teach you what to do, how to do it. You need to focus on it or approach it as a perfectionist and how to work with your perfectionist brain. That's a key part of what I'm going to be teaching you about. It's not that there's anything wrong with you. Your follow through problem is just a planning problem, and you haven't been taught how to plan properly as a perfectionist. And if you've listened to every episode of this podcast and you're like, is there going to be anything new for me in there? 100% there will be. And also, if you have listened to every single episode of this podcast, this was designed exactly for you. And it's just so incredibly helpful. So you can go to samlaurabrown.com/workshop to find out the next time that I am teaching the workshop and to register regardless of whether you're available live at that time or not. Make sure you get there. It's so good. I'm teaching at my whiteboard live, so you can ask questions, but I'm teaching at my whiteboard. And I just teach in a completely different way when I'm at my whiteboard. It's just like me and my element. And if you've ever thought about joining Perfectionist Getting Shit Done or the Power Planning course, you want to be at this workshop and just really get a taste for what it's like to learn from me, what it's like to really study the things that I teach rather than just hearing about it on a podcast. So I will leave the link for you in the show notes and hope to see you there. And I hope you enjoy this episode on the point of goals. Hi, and welcome to episode 113 of the Perfectionism Project. My name is Sam Laura Brown, and this is a podcast where I share personal growth advice for perfectionists. Right now, I am sitting in my hotel room in Cairns in Northern Queensland, Australia, waiting for the Tony Robbins Date with Destiny event to begin. So it's Sunday, the 19th of May, as I'm recording this, and the event starts tomorrow morning on the 20th and goes until the 26th. So it's going to be incredible. I already know it because I am feeling a lot of resistance around it, and that really, to me, is a sign that I'm going to be up-leveling and really improving my life and my mindset. So that's going to be fun, and I just wanted to sit down and record this episode for you about the point of goals. So if you've been listening to the podcast recently, or you're following me on Instagram, I'm at Sam Laura Brown, or you're in my new membership, Perfectionist Getting Shit Done, you will know that I have just opened and closed the doors to my new membership called PGSD, Perfectionist Getting Shit Done. And I'm first of all so incredibly grateful to have 222 of you in the membership. I have in there a bonus that's a goal setting workshop for perfectionists, because such a huge part of personal development is having a clear goal to work towards. And so many perfectionists resist having one clear goal. They don't understand the importance of having one clear goal. They're scared to put pressure on themselves. They're scared to make the wrong decision about what to focus on. All of this stuff comes up. But whenever I'm working with my one-on-one coaching clients, always in the first session, we set a goal, and that's because that brings up all of the work that needs to be done. So in the membership, there is that workshop, and in that forum, I've been having everyone sharing their goals, asking me questions, and I've just been getting so many questions about goals, and I really want to reiterate the point of goals. I've mentioned this across other podcast episodes, but even if you've heard me talk about this, repetition is everything when it comes to learning. So unless your life is reflecting this, you don't actually know it yet. So I would really encourage you to listen to this entire episode. But I really just wanted to record this because I have just noticed a common theme in the forum with questions around goals and a lot of hesitation to really set that big, audacious, impossible goal for yourself, and a lot of fear around doing so. So that's what I'm really going to be talking about in this episode, as well as some other things. So first of all, I just want you to have a think about whether you do actually have a clear goal you're working towards. Clear as in it's measurable and it actually makes your heart beat a little faster. It's not something that is realistic and within reach. It's actually something that is going to grow you and is going to require something of you, and is really going to have you have to create a new story about who you are and a new identity as well. So do you have one clear goal? Or do you have vague goals, as in get fit, be happy, make money? Do you have no goals? So you really actually have so much overwhelm and confusion around goal setting that you haven't pinned anything down? Or do you have 3, 5, 7, 10 specific goals? And I think, perfectionists do all three of these at different times. And in that forum, in the membership, there have been so many people who said that they're really struggling to narrow down from their goals because they have all of these different areas they want to work on at once. And then there are others who are saying they're just really scared to actually set that goal because really the reason we have no goals, vague goals, or a lot of goals is so that we can avoid vulnerability and we can avoid that potential for shame. Because if we have no goals, we can't really tell whether we've failed, so we don't really have to feel any shame around failure. If we have these vague goals, again, you can't really tell if you haven't gotten fit or made money because it's so vague, or being happy. So that is the case there. And also when it comes to having a lot of goals, that again is self-sabotage, and we're trying to avoid vulnerability, because when you have so many goals at once, you can just deflect the failure because you can blame the busyness and the overwhelm for the failure instead of having to blame yourself. And when it comes to perfectionism, it's really all about avoiding shame. And we can be really sneaky with this in terms of goal setting. And I just wanted to quickly mention as well that I do have a few other podcast episodes about goal setting. So if after listening to this, you feel like you really do need a bit of extra help, if you're in the membership, do the goal setting workshop and ask me your questions. But if not, here are the episodes I have for you. Episode 65, how to pursue multiple goals at once. Episode 72, 12 practical tips for setting powerful goals. Episode 79, that episode was the final update on my impossible goal for 2018 and my goals for 2019. And even though that has now passed in some sense, it's still so relevant because in that episode, I really shared the lessons I learned from setting a crazy big goal for myself and not even getting anywhere close, and why I do not regret that whatsoever, and the power of that and all the different nuances that I learned through actually showing up for that goal. And episode 89 is how to turn any goal into a realistic action plan. So they are there for you if you want to go and listen, and I'll link all of them as well in the show notes, which will be at samlaurabrown.com/episode 113. So it's really important that you have one clear goal, even when you're resistant to choosing it. And this is because the point of goals isn't so that you can achieve them and then become good enough. And that is why perfectionists really have a lot of resistance around doing proper goal setting, because when you're in that fixed mindset, you see failing a goal as being evidence that you're not good enough. And that's why we want to avoid that failure, because we don't want to accumulate any more evidence that we're not good enough, because we already believe so strongly and deeply subconsciously that we're not good enough. And you might be able to relate to this in that consciously, you do believe you have potential. You do really believe in yourself and believe that you have something to contribute to the world, and believe that you are capable of more than what you're currently doing, and you are capable of more than your current reality and current circumstances. But still subconsciously, there's this belief there that you're not good enough. And I might go into that a bit more in another episode. I definitely went into that in my course, Get Out of Your Own Way. But it's really important to know that when it comes to goal setting, if you have that fixed mindset, you're going to be really resistant because you don't want any more evidence that you're not good enough. And a really good way to tell it if you're in the fixed mindset is you only want to set a goal that you know you will achieve. So you only want to set a realistic goal. You only want to set something that will end in success. It's kind of that all or nothing approach to goals, and you really want to achieve it as quickly as possible. So someone in the growth mindset when it comes to goal setting is really going to want there to be a process. It's not actually interesting to someone in a growth mindset to set a realistic goal, because there's no growth required if you set a realistic goal, because you already believe you're capable of it. So you're not really calling anything into question. You're not really getting yourself to up level. There's nothing new to learn. There's nothing new to be challenged by. So literally for someone in the growth mindset, if there is not a process and a journey and effort to be put into it, it is not appealing. Someone in the fixed mindset, on the other hand, it's less appealing. In fact, the most appealing goal is a goal where there's no effort required, where success is guaranteed. And to summarize, if you gave someone in a growth mindset the option to push a button and achieve their goal instantly, they would not want to press it. Someone in a fixed mindset definitely wants to press that button because they want the evidence they're good enough, because they have their self-worth all tangled up with productivity, output, goal setting, goal achievement. And they want that instant gratification because it's so uncomfortable for someone in the fixed mindset to be on the way, to be in the journey. And so what I teach when I'm talking about perfectionism is really how to go from that perfectionist fixed mindset and moving into the growth mindset. If you've listened to a lot of my podcasts, you will know that I don't really talk about overcoming perfectionism, and I don't take the approach that many people do around this topic, which is just intellectually understand that done is better than perfect and just stop caring what other people think and all of that. I find it's not really helpful to be focusing on that stuff because it doesn't get to the root of things. But having something positive to focus on, which is creating a growth mindset, is really important. And it's something that you can really actually put effort into, because otherwise, I mean, how do you stop caring what other people think? It's like, I don't know. I've always found that advice really frustrating, and that's why I don't give that advice. But it is so important that you have one goal and that you expect there to be resistance. If you can relate to what I share on this podcast, you are going to be wanting to avoid shame and vulnerability at all costs. And if you're in that mindset, goal setting is going to feel very vulnerable because you have your self-worth attached to the achievement of that goal. So the point of goals isn't to get more evidence that you're good enough or to prove yourself and anything like that. The point of goals is to call everything into question, to up level, to show yourself what's possible, to be an example for others, to experience life fully, to actually be challenging yourself and growing and evolving. When we're in this perfectionist fixed mindset, we think the point of goals is so that we can be good enough and to be worthy and to be lovable. And that's why we want to achieve it as quickly as possible, and we want to not set goals unless we can achieve them. It was really interesting. There was quite a few women in the membership who were saying that they feel like their goals aren't good enough. They feel that other people were talking about bigger goals than them, and that made them, like, they had this goal shame about having goals that they saw as being less than someone else's goals. But it's so important to remember that all goals are equal. All goals are just to grow us. There's no good enough, not good enough. The point of a goal is just that it really is a personal development and growth tool. And if you can learn to strive from this place of abundance rather than lack, that is when goal setting can get really powerful. And I really wish we had been taught this when we were growing up and when we were setting goals for ourselves throughout school. We were really taught that the reason you would strive towards something is because there's some kind of lack in your life, there's something missing, and when you achieve that goal, life is going to be better. For example, once you finish school and once you finish your after-school education, university, college, your life will be better. And then once you get a job, your life will be better. And once you have a husband or a wife, your life will be better. And once you have kids, your life will be better. And once you retire, your life will be better. And I think that's why so many people have a midlife crisis, because they're constantly told that the point of striving is because there's something missing currently. And if you strive towards something, you will get something that's missing. And then there's all this striving that takes place for years and years and years. And then we get there and we realize we feel about the same and that nothing magical happened. And then this crisis happens because there's this real sense of helplessness, because we thought, I was going to feel so much better. And I've talked about this quite a lot on the podcast because I have grown so much personally through setting goals in the last 18 months particularly, which is when I really got serious about goal setting and doing this work for myself. And every time I achieve a goal, I realize that I feel about the same in the best way, in the way that really has taught me that the point of goals, like it doesn't matter if you achieve them or not because you're still going to feel about the same. The point is the journey. And I know you get that intellectually, but unless you're willing to set goals, you're never going to get that on a fundamental subconscious level. If you're like, Sam, yes, I've heard you say all this, and I know that the journey is a point, but I just don't want to set one goal and blah, blah, blah. That is really stopping you from actually getting this at the deepest level. And the reason I started the membership in the first place is because I wanted to help take you guys beyond intellectual knowledge and into real personal growth. So it is so important that you set one clear goal. I speak about how to do that in other episodes, but basically you set a goal for yourself and you just turn it up and up and up until your brain freaks out. It's so fun doing this with my clients. But you turn it up until your brain freaks out and then you rise to the occasion. So many of us don't give ourselves any occasion to rise to. We want to just set a goal that's in line with our current beliefs. But that is not inspiring, it's not exciting, it's not motivating because there's no transformation, there's no evolution, there's no growth in that. But it's important to remember that self-worth and goals are not related. And I could see this in the forum in the membership when I was reading through all of the comments and questions about goal setting, because this fear of setting a goal that you won't achieve is really coming from this place that if I don't achieve it, then I'm going to not feel good enough. And so I want to set myself a realistic goal so that I can feel good enough or I don't have to get any evidence to the contrary. And it comes up in so many different ways and it can be so subtle, but we can have all of these great reasons. You know, I've just got so much going on. I need to have all these different goals in different areas of my life and all these great reasons why you can't have a clear goal. And, oh no, it's this health issue. Oh no, it's this or that. But really, you need to set one clear goal because that is what is going to actually require something of you and is really going to ask you to actually step up and step into the next version of yourself that you can be. And it has to be a goal that is clear enough to be measurable. So again, it can't be, I just want to get fit. I just want to be happy. I just want to be less stressed. They are not helpful goals. I've talked about this. My goal for this year, my biggest goal, and really everything is focused around this, is making $500,000 in my business. And the reason that goal is there is because I have to learn so much to be able to make that kind of impact. I have to change my identity around being an entrepreneur. I have to change my beliefs around money, around accepting money for things that I feel are easy. For example, around coaching. I've spoken about this with a lot of my coaching clients actually recently, that it can be really challenging when you have this belief that it's hard to make money and then you begin actually making money in something that's within your zone of genius and it feels easy, and then that kind of calls into question this belief you have about it having to be hard, and then we overcomplicate things so our belief can be accurate because we always want to act in accordance with our beliefs and have them be true. So having that goal for myself really calls all of my money beliefs into question. It calls into question my beliefs about hustling, because you can only hustle your way to a certain point. And to get to that point, I'm going to need to learn to delegate, to manage my own mindset so much more, to manage my own time. I'm going to need to learn how to pursue that goal whilst also taking care of myself personally. There's so many reasons I have that goal, and it's not about the money. It's not even about the goal, the business, or anything like that. It's so that I have something to be in pursuit of, because when I achieve that goal, I'm just going to set another goal. So it's not about the achievement, though of course it feels good to actually achieve something. But last year I had that goal. I didn't get even a fifth of the way there. And it was probably one of the most powerful years I've had for myself in terms of personal development. And I'm so grateful that I didn't set that goal to be something realistic, because I would not have learned nearly as much about myself if I had just said, okay, last year I made 10 grand or 20 grand or whatever it had been. So this year I'm going to try and make 50. And I ended up in that year making 60,000. But I can assure you, if my goal was 50,000, I would have made less than 60,000, because that 60,000 came from me being in pursuit of something bigger, and that it wouldn't have been nearly as amazing. And I know that might seem really hard to believe. Like, wouldn't it be better to have set that $50,000 goal, to have achieved it, and then you've got this momentum and you've got this accomplishment and you've got this confidence, and then you can build upon it? That's what most people teach, and it's not what I teach. I definitely think it's important to make sure that impossible goal isn't way above your belief system. That's why I said set a goal, and then you just turn up the dial incrementally until your brain is like, no way. Because I set that goal for myself because I was like, even though I've only made probably 10 or 20 grand in my business, 100 grand feels possible. I can see the how. 250, I have no idea really if I could do it, but it's still, my brain doesn't freak out. But 500 just made my brain want to shit itself. And so that's where I set the goal. Instead of being like 1 million, 5 million, 10 million, which still would have been really powerful to do, I like to have it be kind of like 2 notches above the edge of my comfort zone, if that makes sense. So I don't recommend saying, okay, well, this year I'm going to make $100 million. It kind of would work the same, but I've found it to be really powerful to have it be like just a couple of clicks above the edge of like the limit of my comfort zone. And that's where the growth happens. And one of the most amazing things about setting this kind of goal is that you have to learn how to continue striving towards something even when your brain is telling you that you should give up, because there's no way you're going to achieve it. If you have the perfectionist mindset currently, again, it can be changed. You will be believing that everything's linear, first of all. So your brain's like doing this math all the time of, well, if I haven't got X result by now, then I'm not going to be able to get X result by the end date. And then there's this belief that if you can't do it perfectly, you should quit. Again, that's us just trying to avoid shame, because if we're seen to be putting effort into something that's not working, or we know ourselves to be putting effort into something that's not working, we feel that shame. And so the easiest way to avoid that is to be all or nothing. So you're either doing it perfectly or you're not doing it at all. And of course, intellectually, it makes no sense to do it that way, because when you quit, you definitely do not increase your chances of success. But we do that because shame is such a painful emotion and we would rather avoid that emotion. But then the kicker is that we often end up feeling ashamed because we're not taking any action and we're not really testing ourselves and challenging ourselves and asking ourselves to grow. So that's something I wanted to mention when it comes to goal setting. And I think one of the sneakiest ways that perfectionists self-sabotage with goals is downgrading goals. And I spoke about this before, but when I was doing my $500,000 goal last year, when I got about midway, I wanted to downgrade that goal so that I could get that sense of accomplishment. And I found myself around June being like, maybe I should set my goal, like just readjust it to have it be 100,000. So then maybe I'll get closer to it and then I can feel accomplished and then I can get momentum. But the power in it is really learning how to work up to the end date with that goal, instead of being like, I need to do it perfectly or not at all, to instead say, I'm going to see how close I can get to this by the end date. And I'm going to do everything in my power to keep showing up. And it's so incredibly powerful to do this because you will have to learn how to manage your mind in a new way. Currently, your brain says quit if things aren't working out. You will have to teach your brain to keep going and really relearn how to actually work towards something, even if your brain's like, we're not going to get there, so we shouldn't even bother. You're not going to get there, you shouldn't even bother. To just keep showing up for yourself fully until the end date. But we don't do that because it feels too vulnerable, and we would just much prefer to quit, and then we can blame the quitting for the failure rather than having to blame our lack of intelligence or skill or talent. But someone in the growth mindset sees all of those things as things that can be improved with practice and effort. So the other thing I wanted to mention is what will happen if you don't have goals. So I've obviously been talking about why you should have one clear goal, and definitely if you're like, oh, but Sam, you just don't get it. Like, I have so many different things going on right now. Listen to episode 65 where I talk about how to pursue multiple goals at once, because I don't really see an exception to this. And trust me, you guys are like me, where you have a full plate of commitments and you really believe you have 10 different things to improve at once and they're all equally important. And part of that comes from this idea that we want all of our life to be perfect at the same time, and we just end up in this constant cycle of all or nothing, and then nothing ends up happening because we spend a lot of time in the nothingness and not in the all. So when you don't have goals, it's not about then you won't achieve anything, then you won't accomplish anything, then you won't be good enough. No, you are whole, complete, perfect. Whether or not you have goals, whether or not you're achieving goals, whether or not you have vague goals, whether or not you have multiple goals. But what will happen if you don't have goals is that you will experience the discomfort of stagnation and the discomfort of staleness. Like, really, there's the discomfort of growth, which is setting a goal that freaks your brain out, and you have no idea how to do it, and you really have to change your identity. You really have to change everything you believe. That feels really uncomfortable. But if you do not do that, you will instead feel discomfort, but just a different flavor. And that flavor tends to be exhaustion. I was just talking about this with one of my clients actually this afternoon, that often it can be so much more exhausting to not be pursuing something than it is to pursue something. And when we get in this habit of breaking our own trust, not following through with our plans, being in this self-pity cycle, I do have an episode as well on self-pity. I really talked about it there, where we can end up feeling so exhausted because we're not showing up for ourselves and we're constantly feeling sorry for ourselves. So that's episode 84 if you want to go and listen to that one. Highly recommend it. But you will feel exhausted from not even trying to challenge yourself. I know it's counterintuitive, but trust me. I definitely find with my clients and with myself, when they come to me, they're often exhausted from the inaction. They're exhausted from being in their own way. It's tiring to keep making plans and having good intentions and not following through. It's actually so much more energizing to begin building that self-trust and to actually take action and to not procrastinate and to do all of those things. The other thing is that you won't get to really show yourself what you're capable of. And this isn't from a place of you won't be good enough and won't be able to prove you're good enough. It's from just that it is such a thrill to be able to do something that 6 months ago, a year ago, 3 years ago, you weren't able to do. And it can kind of creep up on us. With a different client, I had 2 calls today. she was talking about how it seems like it's so easy for me to talk on these podcast episodes, but this is me 6 years into my business. And this is not my first podcast episode. We're in the hundreds now. And before my podcast, I was doing YouTube videos, I was doing Snapchat and Instagram and so many different things. And I was finding my voice via my blog. Like, this isn't my beginning, but it can really seem like, to others, I get it. Maybe it seems like I came out of the womb this way. I did not. But it's so powerful for me to be able to look back and go, 2 years ago, I didn't even have a podcast. 2 years ago, I was not able to just sit down and record a podcast episode. There's so many meta skills that I've learned. There's so many things I've had to change about my identity to be able to show up in this way. There's so many lives I've been able to impact because I got out of my own way enough to put my podcast out there, even though my brain was telling me this was the dumbest idea I've ever had. So it's more than the thrill of like achieving a goal. It's just the thrill of being able to look back and see that you have been evolving. And when you don't set goals, you don't get that thrill. And it's not even about achieving the goals, because you still get that thrill even if you don't achieve the goal. For example, with my goal last year, I did not achieve the goal. I didn't even get 20% of the way there. But I can look back literally to a year ago, and it bends my mind to notice how different I am. And I know a lot of you notice it too, because you tell me you do, and you tell me how inspiring it is to see my growth. But it's even more inspiring to see your own growth. And if you don't have goals, it's just not going to happen. And when we start to understand that our thoughts create our feelings, feelings create actions, actions create results, can be really easy to just get stuck in this idea that we just need to do all of the thought work and mindset work, and journaling and all of that's very important. But you need to have a goal that gives you something to be doing in the world so that the mindset work all comes to the surface. And to summarize, the reason that you haven't got one clear goal is because it's so uncomfortable. But if you can just know that it's going to be uncomfortable and just let that discomfort be okay, and know that it's going to be uncomfortable as well if you don't have a goal, that is when you can really get yourself to start showing up for your life and start evolving at a much more rapid and satisfying pace. I really believe part of fulfillment is seeing your own evolution and blowing your own mind, and you are robbing yourself of that if you do not have a clear goal that you're working towards. So I hope this has inspired you to get out of your own way and actually set for yourself a clear goal. If you're in my membership, make sure you do the goal setting workshop. I'm so grateful to have you in there, and ask me any questions that you have in the forum. But yeah, I am obviously pretty passionate about this topic, but it really is the crux of personal development. If you are not goal setting, you are not actually really going to experience results in the real world. So I hope you are having an absolutely amazing day. This is all going to be linked up again in the show notes at samlaurabrown.com/episode 113. I will talk to you again soon. Bye. If you struggle to follow through with your plans, then I want to invite you to the Power Planning Workshop. This is a free workshop that I'm teaching live that's going to teach you the 3 simple steps of power planning, which is a flexible planning method for perfectionists who are building businesses. If you don't follow through with your plans due to procrastination, perfectionism, overthinking, or burnout, you want to learn how to take consistent action, which is what you need to be able to do if you want your business to grow. Let me teach you. I've figured it out, and I've taught so many others as well. This is such a great time to learn. So samlaurabrown.com/workshop is where you can go to register today.